What's up, everybody? My name is Vincent. Welcome to Cryptolution, where we talk about everything under the moon in the crypto universe. Today, I'm actually honored to have a very special guest on our show today, and that is the Vice President of Growth from one of the most active and most innovative exchanges in the world, and that is none other than Kraken. Now, I do want to welcome to the stage Matthew Barby. Matthew, thanks for being on the show today.
My pleasure. No, thanks for having me. It's been a really fun few weeks in particular, especially engaging a lot more with the wider Bitcoin community, and yeah, excited to dig in and chat and answer probably a lot of the questions that I'm sure you and the rest of the community have.
Absolutely. We're definitely going to kick it off. It's very exciting. And yeah, so before we talk about these few things I do want to bring up, I do want to understand a little bit of your background because I don't think people understand your role as the Vice President of Growth. And I just want to get into the whole, scope of your responsibilities and also more importantly, the mindset and strategies that you bring as the VP of Growth to the most pivotal platforms out there, such as Kraken. Can you give us a little bit more insight on that?
My role at Kraken, really what I'm responsible for is, driving revenue growth, driving it primarily through onboarding as many new clients into the Kraken ecosystem. And so really my whole team, the whole focus is how can we get Kraken products in front of people within the space and that are new to the space? How can we onboard more people, not just really into Kraken, but a lot of the time into crypto as well? And how can we give them richer experiences? How do we also tackle the myriad challenges that come with expanding globally? Licensing, compliance, all of the fun stuff that many people outside of an exchange never have to worry about, that we do all the worrying for. So a lot of that, and I mean, I've been involved at least, or in one way or another in the crypto space since 2016. Have been largely involved in growth for the majority of my career. Spent best part of a decade prior to coming into crypto in the software space, and then have been CMO over at a Web3 game studio prior to coming into Kraken. Founded a company along the way, did a whole bunch of other stuff, but found my way home to the first place I ever bought crypto, which was Kraken. So it's a really, for me, Kraken is very personal to me as well, and my journey in coming into the space, which has been really nice and fulfilling as well.
That's pretty fascinating. You went from becoming a client to now becoming an employee with Kraken. I think that's an amazing background story of your growth. And I say, yeah, that's something that I would totally support too. The people that onboard me into the crypto space, why not support that platform? And now
Yep.
we're seeing, since I want to rewind back into April of 2024. So when you were talking about your role to pretty much onboard people to an exchange like Kraken, I do want to talk about the launch of the Runes protocol that did come out in April of 2024. And obviously, there are many different mixed reviews from that, some positive, some negative. And this is usually what we see in terms of something just coming out for, that is innovative. But this is fungible tokens on Bitcoin, which is very, very new. We're not even in the 2 year mark. We're like a year and a half. But you were pretty vocal. I've done some research on you, and you've appeared on different podcasts talking about it, speaking about your excitement. But I do want to get a little bit of, stepping into your mindset. Now, when you saw this Runes protocol come out, what about the ecosystem caught your attention? And also, when the month unfolded right after, during that summer, which was kind of a bearish summer for Runes, uh, how did that affect you? Did that change your overall thesis around Runes protocol?
So I'll start kind of at the beginning there, and how I even kind of came around to runes, and why something like runes even piques my interest. I've been through multiple cycles in crypto, and each cycle has got more and more interesting to me personally. If we just park price action and everything that comes with that, which is very fun. Don't get me wrong, but we've seen these new waves of innovation, and each time there's been pivotal moments where a major breakthrough has happened. It's often been initially piled on with controversy. In the crypto space, I mean, Bitcoin is the biggest example of this. There is a huge amount of very maximalist views. I I am not a maximalist, and I actually think like it can be very reductive to be maximalist of anything because it forces you to remain inward. And in the crypto space, there's a lot of stuff that I don't really like, but it's often the gateway into other things. And I think, if we go all the way back to 2017 and not necessarily the advent of ICOs, but the proliferation of ICOs. I'm sure many people watching this were probably around during that period, or if they weren't, they've heard about it. As someone who lived through it, it was a crazy period of time. But people forget, like back then, decentralized exchanges didn't exist. Everything was done on an exchange. Most of the time, it was like a meme coin, if that was going to launch, it would be a whole new layer one blockchain. Like look at Doge, right? Obviously way before 2017, but similar stuff. And a lot of the focus was to be the dominant layer one. There was a huge amount of innovation. And in amongst all of this stuff, we had the block wars in Bitcoin, which is like a pivotal moment that felt in the moment like it was going to blow everything up. Bitcoin Cash was there, and you had like Roger and all of this stuff. It was just chaos. And out of it came some really important moments where I think on the more Ethereum side and the smart contract based side of layer one blockchains, we started to see like real use cases start to form. And actually, then really in the kind of 2018 period is where we somewhat quietly saw stablecoins truly arrive, I think. And no one really got it, and it was like dismissed. And people were just like, why would I want to hold something that doesn't go up in price, right? And then we get into DeFi summer, and it's like, whoa, like decentralized exchanges. We had Compound come, Yarn, and very importantly, Uniswap. And then we had that whole airdrop saga. Loads of people hated airdrops. Like people loved airdrops, but people had very strong opinions about airdrops and how it was like a really bad thing for the space, and it was going to blow things up just like ICOs blew things up, right? And and then we saw that became like the playbook. We saw the proliferation of dexes, and then we had kind of like all the Ponzi craziness that gets built on top that is very easy to kind of shit on, but then it sparks more and more creativity and innovation. And this brings me to my point, I think, is that, at the time I was working full time in crypto, the tail end of the last cycle and through the bear market, and through the FTX collapse. And post the FTX collapse was all-time low. And I remember 2019 being really low because there just wasn't much innovation happening. It kind of felt like a ghost town. And FTX, it was like such a shame because it felt like there was so much promise, so much innovation, and then we just got kind of blew up. And we had a lot before FTX, of course, with Luna. We had Three Arrows, all kind of related. But it was a pretty devastating year, 2022. And then we get into 2023. I decided to move on from my CMO gig. Had a great time there, but it was it wasn't the thing that I thought, I'm going to do something big long term. And I decided to take 3 months out. I was going to really figure out what I wanted to do next. I'd also just sold a business. I was in like a good space to take a bit of time to figure out what was the big thing I was going to commit to, which turned out to be Kraken. But during this time, I was like, do you know what? I just want to have a bit of time to really play around and explore really exciting things that are happening in the space in amongst all of the chaos, because it's usually where good stuff comes. And in those months, the Ordinals was basically launched by Casey, the meta protocol. And I remember the first couple of days after it was launched, I was like, this is kind of interesting, because I was just hearing the Bitcoin maxis absolutely hating it. And whenever I see divisive stuff like that, it's like, okay, this reminds me of like when apes and punks were ripping through and everyone's like, this is dumb, these are JPEGs, I'm just going to right click save this, and and say what you like about NFTs. Even now, it's going to continue to be the most hated rally. These things rally all the time. ETH NFTs, Ordinals, like the lot, like they are here to stay. So Ordinals drops, and I was like, okay, this is different. And I was pretty worn out, in all honesty, of like the NFT meta back then, because we'd kind of done it to death, and it was now just like getting into cash grab territory, outside of the major players that were doing good stuff. So, okay, I'm just going to spend a bit of time figuring this out. I'd actually never ran my own node before on Bitcoin, but having continued to run a couple of ETH validators, and had been a lot more immersed in that world because it was where a lot of the innovation was happening, right? And Bitcoin had never really had that. It's like everyone, like myself, would just, going to just buy and hold my Bitcoin and never touch it for years. And so this was kind of cool. So I spun up a node, and I was just back in the Discords, and it felt like, DeFi summer, early time again. It was the first time I had that feeling. I was like, well, something's happening here. People are in spreadsheets selling JPEGs of rocks for like 4 BTC. And I was like, this is silly stuff, but it's exciting because something new's happening. And then I think the way Casey had really structured Ordinals, he'd left it really open to interpretation quite a lot, and left breathing room for creativity, and was trying not to be the gatekeeper. So was playing around early on there, and I just played around and inscribed I think one of the first 1,000 Ordinals, just playing around. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is interesting. I wasn't really trading Ordinals. I'm a terrible trader. And so it's like, I don't have an edge here outside of being early. And then the Runestone drop happened. And because I'd been an early inscriber of just some stuff that I was throwing onto Bitcoin, I got the airdrop of like Runestone. So I was like, all right, this is interesting. This is cool. I like what's happening here. And there was this whole community built around it. And this was around the time similarly when Arsic were doing like their drop, and I ended up just getting a load of this stuff dumped into me because of the exact same criteria, I guess. So like, okay, this is like renewing my interest, and I'd really been pushing internally at Kraken at the time for us to support Ordinals. We missed the boat there, and OKX, to their credit, and much to our internal discussions, didn't. And I remember when Runes was coming about, we kind of said like, look, we're not going to let this happen again. We have to support something here because there's something like real that's happening. And so when I'd heard a lot about what was happening with Runes, I was like, there's something really interesting here, because BRC20 started happening, but and I think there was the Audi Binance listing, right? And it was like, that went crazy for a while, but it just didn't quite feel like the technical implementation was quite right. There were a lot of flaws to it. And I think what was exciting about the Runes piece was, I think, again, just the mechanics around inscribing on like the rare sats. It was like, there's so many levels where people didn't know how to value these things. and whether provenance was important, whether the SAT was important. And it just, what I liked about that, similar to when Ordinals dropped, was just kind of like, okay, there's different ways in which we can value this, but more importantly, it gives creativity, like creative scope. And the rush to be like the first rune, it was just like, okay, this is exciting. And it felt like mechanically, this could really work. And most importantly, it was pushing the Bitcoin maximalist groups to accept that Bitcoin has a place in in the world of DeFi. And I've been an angel investor in a bunch of Bitcoin layer twos and DeFi, and I really believe in the extensibility of like Bitcoin as a whole. I think there's so much potential to play around that doesn't deviate from Bitcoin's mission. So Runes was just like another example of this, where it's like, hey, here's a minimum in its absolute worst case. This is something that can prove something out to go on and be even bigger. In its best case, this is a really exciting asset class of itself that can hold a level of importance alongside, actually, what I would argue Ordinals has done. For the longest time, they were the by far most volume traded NFTs, even when you had like major collections like Pudgies and Co. that were like gaining traction. So yeah, that's like the overarching piece that I'll shut up in a second and let you ask a question. But like your
No, I
last,
love this. I love this background because, again, most people don't know this backstory about you. And I think they're absolutely not just learning more about you, but they're also understanding what motivates you to make these decisions. So when you rewind back to the criticisms over new innovative things, uh, I typically see the behavior that when there's a lot of FUD or fear within a specific launch of anything, it's actually great press because my belief in marketing 101 is good press or bad press equals great press. And most of the
yeah,
times, people who FUD something are actually promoting more of that specific topic or project or item than the more bullish people are. So that's why I find it very
agreed.
fascinating how you caught on to that. And I think that's what allows you specifically, not just Kraken, but you as an individual person to spot things before they start trending, before they start popping off.
Well, I think this is, for anyone that's been in the crypto space, everyone's always looking for signal, alpha, like what's happened, what's going to be next. And we are conditioned to chase and seek narrative. And while that can be minimized to just someone searching for profit, actually, I think it's where you find these pockets of innovation and can support some of those. I really try and engage a lot in. I get questions all the time about all kinds of shit, whether it be like runes, whether it be like not runes and stuff about crypto. Why are we not listing this thing? Why are we not listing that? And I try to just be as honest as I can. And if I can't answer something for like compliance, regulatory reasons, or any other reasons, I'll just say. But the thing that what I think we've tried to do at Kraken, Arjun does a great job of this as well. Peter on the listings team and many of us is try to build more of a connection with the builders, the communities in the space to help them understand. Because, and I still even see this now, and I understand where this comes from. It's like a lot of people assume that what we want to see from, let's take asset listings, an asset that we list is that, we search out for these things that are like hidden gems and we want them to like go up in price and that's success. That's not our role. We don't play the role of whether a price goes up or down. We would like people to have a good experience in trading it. We don't make profit from whether the token goes up or not. And our decisions to like list assets are not just focused on like how much fees can we generate from this thing, right? Like, and really what we want is to strike the right balance where we need to think about the clients at Kraken. And first of all, we need to say, okay, look, is there a high potential that clients could have a very bad experience in trading this asset because there's not enough liquidity or there's sketchy teams behind it and we think like, they could just get immediately dumped on and that's not a good experience, right? So there's like the diligence piece. There's also the compliance piece. Like, can we literally, from a regulatory perspective, list this asset in all of these geos? I've had like so much talk about Germany, right? And like, why are we not listing dog in Germany? Believe me, we want to do this. There's a big focus. We will hopefully get to do this, but there's no conspiracy, right? Like, believe me, the general feeling is any asset that we ever list on a platform, if it were up to exclusively us, this isn't like a cost decision, nothing like that, no profit decision. We want to make it available to everywhere possible, right? That's good for us. It's good for everyone involved. When you get into stuff like runes, I cannot emphasize enough how much more complex it is to list something like runes, right? Like a typical token, you think about the way that we would list assets is, let's just take an ERC20 token, right? Because people be like, oh, how can you list this meme coin that's like on ETH that, by their definition is like shit or whatever, but then you won't list this asset that, let's say, is a rune before we did that. Well, it's like, we've built all the infrastructure to list ERC20 tokens. So for us, it's not like a one-click listing, but we kind of call it that internally. So we have all the infrastructure. All we need is market maker to be able to like actually ensure that, we have tight spreads on the market. It's a good trading experience. We need to do our diligence on the asset. And we feel like there's a good community around it that can drive a bit of traction, but the risk is so much lower there. And a lot of the time there's like a team behind it or a foundation, and we can be like, okay, look, there needs to be some initial liquidity. Like, who do we speak to about this?
And ERC20 tokens have been around a lot longer, so there's obviously an audience and more trading volume and activity, so it totally makes more sense.
100%. And like, it's a lot easier to assess smart contract risk and stuff on like proven stuff like that. Runes, so hard for so many reasons. The technical implementation, like no one else had done this. Like no other centralized exchange had done it. There was no point of reference. And we had so many people reach out, and I was really thankful for it. Like, hey, how can we help you? The guys at Xverse, super helpful. Leonardus as well, of course, like super helpful. We're chatting to all these people, getting their take, but at the end of the day, they also don't know Kraken infrastructure. And the most important thing for us above anything else in Kraken's business is really what we're known for is security. And the last thing we would ever compromise is security. So building on the infrastructure was hard, and it was very unique and different. We had to pull engineers off of stuff that categorically would have made us more revenue and profit. It was like categoric. But we decided we wanted to support this. And even when we did that, usually that's the hard bit. But then it's like, we make the decision we're going to list dog. So who's the market maker? Who do we get the initial liquidity? No, there's no market makers. Okay, great. That makes things harder. And you're like, okay, well, I remember like the team being like, we were talking about, oh, it'd be great if we could do a dog airdrop. So one of the team is like, yeah, Matt, like, can we speak to the foundation and maybe see if they'll do like a treasury grant to us and we'll give that as an airdrop? There's no foundation. There's no treasury. There's nothing. It's like, okay. So like the airdrop, usually we would have a foundation do it. We just did that. I mean, that basically was most of the fees that we generate anyway. We just ate the cost because we were like, this will be great for the community. We'll give this back. All of these things happen behind the scenes. There's so much complexity. And even though we have all of the infrastructure built out today, all of those complexities happen still today, now when we go and we want to, and we are going to list more runes. So it's working and navigating all of this stuff. But for us, the thing that excited us about doing this is One, we got to serve an underserved community within the Bitcoin ecosystem, which is very close to our heart. Now, we're not just good Samaritans, right? We saw a commercial opportunity as well, of course, where we believed that this could give us a cool edge with our clients and say, hey, look, this is a whole asset class that you can get access to, and we think it's pretty exciting. And you can gain some exposure, and we're going to enable you to do that. I think with stuff like runes, even even people that are crypto natives can struggle a little bit in acquiring stuff in runes. Like I would put myself, as you're probably starting to gather, in like the full furthest end of like degen. And this is like where a lot of the Kraken team are. You know, we all mess around and play on all of these protocols. We've had an internal Slack runes channel since the start of runes where we just all talk about stuff and share stuff. We've all been inscribing things at the start of Ordinals and do this like across everything. Solana channels, like ETH channels, like everything. So we all love playing around with this stuff. But we definitely all recognize, myself included, that this is not the kind of thing that the newbie coming to crypto is going to be able to do, nor would I really even recommend it. Even when I look at like, I thought it was really cool when Magic Eden supported runes to begin with as well on chain. Even that experience is like, I don't want to call it clunky because I think they did a great job. But it's just hard. It's like
Yeah,
hard. You've got to
yeah,
buy in lots and all of this stuff, you know?
yeah.
So trying to like bring that together, and we saw in runes like a community, way more than volume. By all measures, where we would usually say, is there like a minimum amount of volume here that can make sense for us to spend this engineering time, all this stuff? None of that made sense. But the community and the passion, and actually ended up, you know, the volume that came in, certainly in the dog listing, was way more than what we anticipated. And the engagement we've had since has been amazing.
You know, when I look back on your process with integrating runes, you're pretty careful of what you were going to say anywhere on X because you're probably not surprised that the people on X are like hawks. They'll look for any specific comment, reply, like for that matter, as a form of action. And so
I felt like Jay Powell sometimes when I was
it's you got
talking
to
through this stuff.
interest rates hikes anyways. But yeah, they'll pay attention and the market will react. But since you were very careful, there is this after dog was this for perpetuals, which was the very first time that even the runes ecosystem saw that a US based exchange and especially a tier one was paying attention to runes, followed by months later, you were then talking online. People were like, why is Matthew talking about runes? You even said, listen, I don't say things unless there's something to say. People
Hmm.
even question that, and you're like, listen, I'm telling you, I'm not saying things unless I have something to say. Then all of a sudden, June 27th, Dog was the first rune to be listed for spot trading. Now, given that you just mentioned right now, the trading volume and the activity surpass maybe what you had envisioned, or at least what the Kraken team had envisioned, which is very promising, by the way. I mean, where do you expect a trajectory in terms of activity, community strength, and even market behavior for Dog or for Runes moving forward now that you have this data behind the scenes? I mean, for us, the users, we only see things on the surface, which is price movement, the buy sell button, and then just the activity on X within the different Kraken accounts. But for you, as the insider, with the insider knowledge, not that you should leak anything, even though that'd be amazing. That's okay. But what is your prediction of what this runes protocol could be in the year, 2 years, or just the cycle coming?
As you mentioned, I'd always been really careful about what I was going to say for two reasons. The first reason was I don't want to give people false hope. And I'd said that before. I have no desire to, you know, engagement farm. I really just wanted to give people the honest truth. And I know from certainly prior to being at Kraken, it can feel like this giant black box that centralized exchanges operate in. You have no idea the inner workings, decision making, and it's easy for things to just like go crazy in people's minds. So I was hoping to like bring people, backstage a little bit and just talk through how this stuff happens, especially with token listings, because, over the years, the crypto space has had a lot of issues in that area, not with Kraken, but I've been on the other end when I was in my last startup, and we had a token. I've been through the process of trying to get listed, and I also know what can go on during those situations, what previously used to go on at other places. So I wanted to like help shine a light a little bit on that. The other thing is that in markets like Runes, getting listed on Kraken is a big thing. So if I come out and like hint heavily, I could move the market, and I did not want to be doing stuff like that. It's not fair on anyone, nor do I want to even be remotely involved in that kind of stuff. So I was very careful about that. I was also very careful in terms of like anything that I was holding. Never like made sure I was like not holding material size. I still have my original dog airdrop and all of the ordinals that were like sent to me and things like that. So all of this was playing a big role. Now, where do I think this can go? This, and I think for the whole runes community, should be a adrenaline shot. But adrenaline runs out. Now we have the adrenaline, and the runes community has to take that and run with it. There's only so much that we can do here, and we've got more shots coming. And I think August is going to be an amazing month for the runes community as a whole, of where we do plan all things going ahead to list multiple runes. But that adrenaline shot will come to an end, and we will continue to support that space, as we will continue to support many other spaces as well. I look at something like Dog, and it is, of course, by all public measures, the best positioned right now today to drive the most volume. It's hit a billion in market cap previously. I don't believe that Dog will be the only rune to hit a billion in market cap, which I've said previously before, over the next couple of years. But what I hope this will do is, one, give and bring some more flows and stability to existing teams that are investing and building in the space and in Bitcoin as a whole, to help them kind of grow their communities and keep investing in the space. And we'll also bring in new teams as well, and bring more innovation and keep pushing and pushing so that that whole ecosystem continues to grow. Runes is more important than Kraken. Like we're opening a door, and we're going to help shepherd people in, but the whole space has to continue to mature, and we want to do that. We'll support that, but it's on the builders to keep pushing this forward.
That's actually quite fascinating that you bring that up. This all comes back to the whole community aspect, that when you mentioned the shot of adrenaline, we had that shot of adrenaline when Runes came out in April 2024. And as a great example, it was exciting, but then it withered away. And that's why we had that bearish summer followed. And it's a great reminder, even with, Runes coming to Kraken, that adrenaline does run out, and eventually community has to step in to keep that thing alive. When Kraken started to do this, we actually felt like Kraken was a part of this community. It wasn't just an
Mhm.
exchange. And in fact, you, Peter, Arjan, all of you have been not just, supportive of launching Runes, but very much wanting to see Runes win, which we don't often see from anybody, let alone an exchange. And people in important roles such as yourself. Something I definitely want to ask is, with Runes coming out, since they are now the fungible token standard from the data that I've seen on Bitcoin, is there a lot of room for growth, considering if you compare it to SPL tokens or meme coins on Solana or ERC20 tokens on Ethereum? From my thesis, I feel like there's a lot more growth, because just like what we saw in early stages of other meme coins or even utility tokens on Ethereum using Uniswap, say for instance, I feel like we're just at the beginning. But because of those learning lessons from Solana and Ethereum, we're seeing Bitcoin DeFi grow substantially, in my point of view, because we're had experiences on these other chains and migrating those developers and those minds to this mother chain, which is Bitcoin DeFi. And this is something that we've never seen before. So, in your perspective, is there more growth? Is there substantial growth for that matter for fungible tokens on Bitcoin comparative to Ethereum and Solana?
Yes, I think that there is a huge amount of growth versus like the total addressable market. From where we are today in runes, the exposure to new wider ecosystem participants outside of those that have been in the runes ecosystem since, the earlier days is relatively small. I think us listing dog has really started to open that up. But I still don't know if we've truly started to see people dive more into what runes are. I think that dog has been very important for runes overall, regardless of like, if you have strong feelings where you don't like dog or you do like dog. I'm why I think this is important is you need to have something that has had a bit of a run, has reached certain levels, and we're seeing this in other runes at the moment as well. And I think the more the wider community can view this less as like PvP and that brings up a lot of these all together. The reality here is that if the future listings of runes continue to be successful and exceed expectation on Kraken, Kraken will not be the only ones to say, hey, maybe we should list these. And for a lot of other exchanges, no doubt they will be monitoring this closely and watching our volume, seeing how things play out before they want to commit. And they'll be thinking, does this have legs? The other important thing to remember, you talked about the initial launch of runes. It launched at a very challenging time. It was really right as we were about to go into a pretty bearish period. And it wasn't really until later on that year that even anything started to see any kind of meaningful price appreciation. And pretty much that was isolated to Ethereum restaking narrative, and then that kind of petered out. So I think there's an element here where you can't fight the cycles. What you would want to see for runes, as like many sectors would, is that as we move into more bullish periods with increased volatility, that rune tokens hit higher highs and higher lows. It's going to remain to be cyclical. You'll have other periods where things kind of pull back quite a bit. But I think the foundational liquidity that's going to come in from Kraken, and no doubt others, combined with the inevitable meme coin run that's going to happen later this year or early next year, that will happen again. If Bitcoin memes can become a big part of that, and runes, as a result, become a big part of that, I think that's going to be really helpful. And then on top of all of this, I think whether it's next year or the year after, the other thing I think is absolutely inevitable is that we see Bitcoin DeFi start to really expand into Bitcoin layer twos, and many, many more. And runes are a nice kind of piece attached to that narrative in the same way as ordinals and everything surrounding it, where it can catch a bid if it can remain in the meta. And I think that's the key. So I think runes communities need to be outward looking and thinking about how can we bring more in, and gain more exposure to some of these other untapped areas across crypto, because capital and flows in crypto is non-discriminatory. It will go where momentum is, and I think that's going to be the key focus.
I have two rapid questions before I get to a question that I actually am excited to talk to you about, which is on topic but off topic. So these two rapid questions. The very first one, which is let's just get right to the last question about runes. So you said recently, I think it was today, Rune August or Rune Guest or something like that. So that's the new title. You
Rolls
said,
off the tongue, right?
yes. So now that we have some, obviously alpha from you on this channel, but also you've been very vocal about runes coming to Kraken. What are some tips of advice for people that don't know anything about runes? Imagine they're watching this video and they're
Mhm.
just learning about runes. What piece of not financial advice, but more like a precursor or non-financial guidance for these clients or retail investors before they buy into runes? What would you tell them in terms of understanding the high potential, but also the high volatility within the sector?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about this, it's like you should understand what's under the hood of whatever you're investing in, whether you're just collecting and you're not doing this necessarily for profit, you want to be a part of like a community, or whether you are actively focused on trading. I think you should understand what the underlying mechanics are that are powering what you're doing. And we've actually published quite a lot of educational content around runes specifically on the Kraken Land Center. There's loads of great educational content out there. Ordinals, I've written essays that I've published on Ordinals and beyond. I think starting with just getting like the high level here and then understanding that, what runes largely are today, at least, are majority meme coins, very volatile, um, and no different from their behavior and patterns to, some of the larger like Solana, ETH memes. So, regardless of what technology is powering it, you're going to have the same disclaimers that come with that. These assets are focused and differentiated from those that I've mentioned in that they are, tapped into the Bitcoin ecosystem. And while they don't necessarily directly tap into Bitcoin liquidity, I think there is a very novel way in which they're produced, and it's kind of fun. I think when I look at what's interesting about runes is sure a lot of it is meme coins. If you like meme coins, you'll love runes because it blends together like some of the cool parts of NFTs, and also the interesting parts of meme coins together and adding in this like additional layer of culture, and it's completely different to the way that many other memes and communities are built out. So I think there's a there's a lot of interesting stuff. I would say dig into some of the tech part. And if you don't want to have to worry about all of that, which you won't, of course, like you can trade through Kraken. It'll be super simple. Or, you can go and explore and spin up, a Taproot wallet and go try buy some of these on chain. I would encourage doing both, so you can really get an understanding of like how some of all of this works.
That's actually a really great message for newbies that don't really understand how to enter the specific market. But for me, I absolutely love Kraken's UI UX. It's easy to buy, sell, trade, convert any crypto. You have on the exchange over 400 different cryptocurrencies from different chains that you can swap instantly for dog, which was never a thing just a couple months ago. We had to deal with lots. So people will never understand that pain as times have gone by. But
Yeah.
okay, so second to last question, we're going to talk about ordinals. This, I think, something I want to get insight from you. So NFTs are kind of resurging, and
Mhm.
we're seeing Ethereum price resurging as well. But people thought NFTs were dead, and because of that, I have to talk about ordinals since they are quote unquote the NFTs of Bitcoin. So now
Mhm.
that we have on-chain artwork and everything built within Bitcoin in terms of art, do you think that ordinals are going to have a sustained comeback? Meaning, like, if they come back, do you think it's not just going to be a pump and dump, or do you think ordinals actually may just be a gateway to something more? Meaning, more than just art, maybe something else that NFTs aren't? I mean, I'd love to get your perspective on that.
My take is that Ordinals will absolutely have a sustained resurgence. I also think that ETH and Sol NFTs will have a sustained resurgence. I have no skin in the game here, by the way. I'm just speculating, but pretty sure this is going to play out. It will be a hated rally, which will further fuel the rally, which will maintain the staying power of it. If we do see the momentum in the space play out at a macro level, if we see rate cuts in September, if we see continued bias towards risk assets, if we see a sustained drop in the dollar, and if we see inflation get under control, we're going to have a massive end to this year for crypto. And what happens in there is that people, the degens in the space, do what degens do best, and they find the place at the end of the risk curve to allocate and speculate. Begins with memes, and will definitely, as we're starting to even see in the past couple of weeks, that NFTs will catch a bid. I mean, I think punks were up like 30% in a week. I saw a bunch of the top ordinals collections up 30, 40%, some doing even more. And they're not at like some of their highs from, what was it, December 2024, I think was like the big ordinals one. But if I were to make a prediction around NFTs, it's that we will see a massive run. We will see crazy prices coming with collections like punks. However, I also believe that in amongst all of the crazy run, that Bitcoin will do the highest volume of trading in NFTs through all of this. I I would I would wager a lot that that will happen, and I believe that as long as NFTs will remain a part of, it will remain an asset class and a part of like the typical cycles, ordinals will remain as being a core staple part of that in the same way that punks always will. Not all collections, but at least like some of the majors and maybe ones that haven't come around, and we'll probably see more projects move and build and do ordinals collections, etc. over time.
It actually reminds me that this time around, we have something that we didn't have before, which is institutional interest and support. Now we have more people with bigger dollars. Even Wall Street may dip their toes into something like this, which just kind of surfaced as you brought that up. So, the most hated rally. I love that title. Okay, now here's the last question, and I just found out that about this about you. Let's talk about Formula One. Okay, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
big fan of Formula One, and
Yep.
I was actually a big fan of the Williams racing team before even Kraken started sponsoring them. And so I've been
Before it
following.
was cool.
Yes, exactly. So, now that Kraken is supporting this team, you guys do have this Kraken F1 meme contest. But before we talk about that, I want to understand why it was important for you, specifically, not Kraken, why it was important for you to see basically the exchange that you work for get involved into the sport. Now, you have spoken on a different interview, I think it was over a year ago, and you talked about how Formula One has become this media engine, quote unquote. And a lot of things have changed since a year has passed, meaning in a good way. We've seen
Yep.
now movies being made about F1, documentaries getting a lot more eyes and attractions from all ages and all genders from around the world. Now, given that a year has passed, what have you seen as the reward for having Kraken involved in F1? What is the growth that you've seen over time with, your image being on that car? And yeah, I'd love to get your insights on that.
Like with any major brand partnership, what we're looking to do is twofold. One, we want to gain exposure to new audiences that align well with our brand, our product, where we can solve a problem for them that we typically couldn't reach through traditional channels. And then secondly is for, this huge intersect in the Venn of crypto investors and F1 lovers, which is a pretty sizable overlap. We want to continue to gain exposure to them. The thing that's been great with Williams is that we've had a long-standing partnership with them. We just had Team Principal come and do an AMA with the whole Kraken team yesterday, actually, which was really fun.
James Vowels, yeah.
Yeah, and it's what we do is we try to do a lot where the Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, they'll do so many like little media bits for us, even in ads and like different like fun creative things that we'll try and do to reach more people, giveaways, do in-person activations. I think it's just a great way for us to partner and align with a great, exciting institution that lines up nicely to the types of people that we want to reach. And it's not just Williams. We have partnerships in football as well. So Tottenham Hotspur, RB Leipzig, Atletico Madrid. We'll actually do a lot more of these because one of the big things as well is global expansion is huge for us. And while many people in the US, the UK, like myself, and across Canada and Australia, very familiar with Kraken. We want to reach as many people as possible. And as we expand into Latin American markets, as we expand and deepen our roots in Europe, we want to be able to partner with familiar brands to help us reach them. Because it's incredibly difficult in a crypto business to reach new customers. There's a huge amount of restrictions in place in what you can't say, the way in which you can solicit new business. So you have to, a lot of the time, really think about non-traditional means. I'm not necessarily saying like an F1 partnership is a non-traditional means, but we have this like multiplier effect that comes with the way in which we think about user acquisition at Kraken, alongside upper funnel brand partnerships and giving us like a place to hammer home our message and gain exposure while we get a lot more granular in a load of different other more experimental channels and promotions and stuff that we do. And, asset listings, which is an important driver of growth because we bring whole new communities into Kraken and they become a powerful voice for reaching others as well.
All these activations, I think, I love that you broaden the scope into different sports, but listen, in a way, what you're doing is you have to bring in normies sometimes, people who knew nothing about crypto. The UI UX in Kraken is so easy to use that it's not my primary exchange that I trade on. That's why I canceled my
It's
Coinbase
great.
account. Yeah, I don't use
I
Coinbase at
love
all.
to I love to hear it. I love to hear it.
So before we go, I want some motivation for the dog army. Okay, so they are a part of this F1 meme coin contest. Okay, so before you give any words of wisdom for them, my main question is, okay, so we know that P1 is going to secure whoever wins it a spot on the Formula One Williams Racing rear wing. So that's the back of the
Yep.
car. But there have been hints from the Kraken exchange. This is just words from them that said potentially P2 could be rewarded. But I have to point this out. In Formula One, there are usually three winners. There is the first place, second place, third place. Could there potentially be a third place reward for whoever's in the standings? Is this possible? Can you give any words of wisdom or any leaks on this interview?
We've still got some time left. I think we want to make sure, the big prize is of course hitting that number one spot and being on the back of the Williams race car. And I mean, whoever wins, I'm genuinely excited to just see how baffled so many people are going to be about a token being on the back of this, a meme being on the back of the rear wing, which is going to be very, very funny just on it in itself. We wanted to do something for the second place. We'll share more on that. I'm not going to share that now. No plans as of yet for third place. So I would say, we want to keep pushing. I think regardless, this hopefully is also bringing a lot of good exposure to not just dog but to runes as well. And we're gonna keep moving on this. We've made an investment in runes. We want to an investment in the community. And we want to continue to do that. And I will also say, thank you to a lot of the teams, all the different. We've been speaking with pretty much every team in the rune space. They've been proactive, reaching out to us. And I'm not just talking about asset listings here. People genuinely want to help. They want to know how they can help promote. And something that's been really nice to see, actually, despite what most people on X often see, is that a lot of these teams are incredibly supportive of one another and want everyone else to win, and have been coming from that place in terms of how can we just like get more eyes on this whole space. I haven't come across a single situation where it's been like us versus them. So that's been really reassuring, and that's what we want to see.
Being in the runes atmosphere, it feels like it's not just one token fighting for itself, but it feels like we're fighting for a protocol here. Something
Yeah.
that we can see potential and we see what Kraken's doing to support that. And Matthew, thank you so much for spending time with us. It's the top of the hour, and whatever we just learned today, we learned a lot more now than we did before this interview started. So everybody within the Runes community, thanks you for your attendance and answering these very difficult questions. And we will continue to support, and we are absolutely looking forward to Runes in Kraken in August. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
My pleasure.